Many of us want to live a more ethical life. Recycling, catching public transport, donating to charity. These are all the things that many of us do in order to live a more ethical life. But not all of us know that financial affairs can also be more or less ethical, depending on who we bank with. Uh, it all depends on where exactly your bank invests the money it controls on your behalf. So nowadays you can not only choose a traditional bank, but you can also choose to invest in an ethical bank. So, as you already know, today we are going to talk about ethical banking, and first of all I would like to present the topics that we are going to talk about. So we'll start with we already had a short introduction, and now I will tell you a little bit of a history, and so now I will tell you a little bit of a history why there is such a need for ethical banking, why such a need appeared, and then I move on to the definition of ethical banking. Later on I will present the main characteristics of ethical banking that is common to all ethical banks. I will proceed with ethical banking and profit. After that I will present how ethical banking is different from the traditional banking, what features differentiate it from the traditional banking. Later on I will present shortly Triodos Bank example for you, and I will finish this presentation with presenting the situation of ethical banking in Lithuania. So as I said, we'll start with a short history. Since the 30s of the 20th century, the banking business, which originally had social connotation, for instance such as cooperative bank or mutual banks or savings banks, has been losing its ethical features. This urged the needs of the birth of the new generation of banks, so-called ethical banks. These have the objective of achieving a positive impact in the collection and in the use of money. They invest in new activities such as organic farming, fair trading, renewable energy, and the third sector, and so on. They also respond more and more to the needs of those who are excluded from the banking system, and to the needs of savers who are more and more interested in the way that their savings are used. Today I'm going to talk about ethical banking, and first of all let's introduce the definition so it would be clear what ethical banking is. So an ethical bank is also called social, alternative, sustainable bank. It is a bank concerned with the social and environmental impacts of its investments and loans. Ethical bank should ensure that your money will be invested in socially and morally positive ways, and won't be invested in anything that could be to the disadvantage of the society. So ethical banks promise their customers that they won't invest their money in certain commodities such as tobacco, alcohol, weapons, and similar. So ethical banking is a fairly broad term, and this allows financial institutions to decide for themselves what sort of policies they wish to pursue and which principles they are willing to follow. Those principles and policies are often written down in policy documents that are available to the public and their clients. But while banks have their own policy differences and similarities, There are certain tendencies that all of the ethical banks share. Some or otherwise it can be called common characteristics. So there are 4 basic points that are similar to all of the banks. That is community involvement, sustainable practices, client screenings, and consistent internal and external ethics. So the first one, community involvement, means that the bank takes an active interest in its community's welfare, and takes steps to improve it. Among other things, this can also include funding affordable housing projects, providing scholarships for students in local high schools, sponsoring community events, and holding seminars, for instance, to educate members of the community about their services and so on. The second point, sustainable practices. The bank makes an effort to apply environmentally friendly practices whenever and wherever possible, as well as to support clients who practice those policies. Client screening is also very important characteristics, meaning that the bank screens its clients in order to avoid doing business with individuals, organizations, and corporate entities with a history of unethical and immoral practices. For instance, it may avoid doing business with a company that has a history of using child labor and so on. And the last point, consistent internal and external ethics. If to put it in a simple way, the bank practices what it preaches, meaning that if a bank applies the same ethical centers to its internal operations as well as it does to the external operations. For example, if a bank is not going to do business with a company that does not offer its employees health insurance, it cannot refuse to offer health insurance to its own employees. So these are the 4 main characteristics that are common to probably all of the ethical banks. And as I already told, the rest comes with every bank and may be a little bit different from bank to bank, depending on their own internal policies. Ethical banking and profits. It's important to remember that while financial institutions that practice ethical banking try to serve the disadvantaged, and those actually aren't the only services they provide. And it is also important to remember that just because a bank is an ethical bank, it doesn't mean that it should not keep an eye on its bottom line. Sometimes, because still for the bank the main thing is to reach some profits. Moreover, good intentions and humanitarian efforts do not protect banks from financial weaknesses and economic downturns. So what distinguishes an ethical bank from the traditional bank? There are a couple of the features, and I will try role of an ethical bank, origin of money, destination of money, criteria and values for the use of the money, and conditions for bank management. So I will go through each of them, so it would be we would have a better idea. So the first one, role of an ethical bank, means that the role of an ethical bank is to work for the common good and ensure the right to receive credit through a bank activity consisting in raising funds and reallocating them in the form of credits for cultural, social, and environmental projects. Through the activities, social ethical banks promote social inclusion, sustainable development, development of socio-economical development of social economy and social entrepreneurship. Ethical banks also have a role to raise public awareness on the role of money and the failure of the economy based on a short term and profit as the only objective. The next point, origin of money. The money on which an ethical bank bases its collection and its capital comes from the savings of the customers, which are created through the activities in real economy, meaning that in the ethical bank the dirty money is not accepted. And by saying dirty money, I have in mind the money coming from criminal groups, from mafia, from weapon industry, and from non-declared money and similar ones. The destination of money is also a bit different. Since the main purpose of an ethical bank's credit activity is to have at the same time a positive impact in social, environmental and economical level, the bank addresses its collection saving of money to socio-economic activities aimed at social, environmental and cultural profit. So this is achieved through the support in not-for-profit organizations to activities for human, social and economical promotion. In an ethical bank, the relationship between the customer is often under the form of partnership, and the values of social and environmental impact are essential and inseparable from the value of economic impact. So usually with the usually with the economic assessment of the projects, there is social and environmental assessment carried out. And since there is such a thorough assessment of the projects in multiple aspects, each funded project enables ethical banks to have a very low risk level. An ethical bank never finances any project or activity developed in controversial sectors such as tobacco, alcohol, gambling, pornography, violence, oppressive governments, human rights violations and similar ones. Also, an ethical bank pays special attention to support the initiatives for self-employment and entrepreneurship of women and youth, often through microcredit and microfinance. And an ethical bank endorses all these values both to support its local, national territory and to operate abroad under the principle of international solidarity. So the next point is criteria and values for the use of money. And the most important thing is that the investments of an ethical bank are managed transparently. Some ethical banks even give the customers an opportunity to decide where they want their savings or a part of their savings to be invested in. An ethical bank does not speculate in short-term operations, but favors the long-term and the real economy. And the last point is conditions for the management, for bank management, is that an ethical bank puts credit and the service of people, and the exclusive research for profit is not its objective. A fair profit, however, is needed to ensure the viability and sustainability of the bank. However, an ethical bank may set a limit to the remuneration of its capital, and usually the profits of an ethical bank are reinvested in the social objectives of the bank itself. An ethical bank is deeply rooted in the territory it operates in and in socio-economic networks. This allows the bank an opportunity to have a full knowledge of its clients and of their funded projects. And as it was already mentioned, one of the most important features in the bank is transparency, both in the origin and in the use of money, in credit and in business management. And transparency also must be ensured towards the customers. There is also even transparency in the salary management, as it publishes the salary of each employee annually. And to finalize, to sum up everything, I just wanted to say that a bank that wants to be an ethical bank must meet all the criteria that I have just mentioned, and it cannot have a traditional banking group as controlling shareholder. And what they say that Triodos Bank only lends to invest in organizations that benefit people and the environment. So it bases its activities on the main principles of an ethical bank. And they say on the website, they say that we connect savers and investors who want to change the world for better with entrepreneurs and sustainable companies doing just that. And we are the only specialist bank to offer integrated lending and investment opportunities for sustainable sectors in a number of European countries. So talking about Triodos Bank activities and services, it has over 25 years of experience in financing renewable energy and transition to renewable energy. It also enhances the development of individuals in the community in art and culture sectors. Moreover, Triodos Bank finances organic food chain from farm to fork. So provides financial support for small business in developing countries. And Triodos Bank is very proud of sustainable banking, and it says it's a leading expert in sustainable banking for over 30 years. So the Triodos Bank, with so many services and activities, is a perfect example of an ethical bank and the perfect alternative to the people who are willing to invest the money in better causes, and especially to know where the money is invested while they put them in the saving account. Talking about Lithuania, we do not have ethical banks here, but however, since there is a trend that the banks, the people are getting fed up with the banking system, and then the banks are only seeking for profit. There is also at least tendency in the banks to offer some ethical services. So, thank you for watching. I hope this video was useful, and have a nice day.